Good morning. As was said, my name is Jay Florey. I'm on career note on how I count, including a stint as a kennel helper at a vet clinic in Seattle where I got paid to walk dogs and play with cats. That was just probably the coolest, didn't pay very well, but it was probably the coolest job I've ever had. Brief review of the agenda. We're doing the introduction now. I'll do an overview. And then we'll look at the major parts of the interface. We're going to skip the mobile, or we're going to skip dispatching and routing. If anybody's interested in that, we might be doing that with a later group. And like I say, we're recording this, so we'll let you do that on your own.
A later group today? Or
yeah, later group today. There was one, the third group today expressed an interest in dispatch.
I think if there's time, I think Parks would might be interested. Yeah, so if there's time.
Okay, we'll see how we're doing. It's pretty ambitious, so you only got 90 minutes. And I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can without skipping anything. It's a small group, so feel free to ask questions. I do have one request. Phones on vibrate or silent. And I do understand that life goes on and that your work doesn't stop because you're here listening to me. So if you do need to take care of urgent business, feel free. Please go outside though. Thank you. We did introductions. What I would like to do is take just a brief couple minutes here. Other than the dispatch, which we just talked about, are there any other concerns or top-of-mind interests, things you would specifically like to see me cover or discuss? Yes?
I'm not sure if it's included in there, but for the technicians, the engine codes, what they will see.
Okay, that's deeper than we can get into today. We do have other training that we can do. We can do a more detailed, we can do a deeper dive into things like diagnostic codes and engine values that are available. Yeah. But this is, I'm sorry to say, this is a higher level introduction. And if people want to, if you have specific questions that we can't answer today, just write them down or we'll put contact information up at the end of the demonstration. Feel free to email us and ask your questions then.
And then those questions will go to me.
Okay.
Donna Buzard. And we're just for the purpose of the pilot, just so you know, we're collecting the questions that you have initially, so that we can get a feel for what questions are related, so we can help people out when we actually go live. Okay.
Okay, so my goal for today, if I were to sum all of these bullet points up in one statement, it would be to get you familiar enough with the web interface that you can productively use the system during the trial. That's the bottom line goal. I'm not going to read through all of these. We have created a generic username, really creative, KCTrain. The URL is here, and if anybody who is online would like to log in and follow along live, you're welcome to do that. There is a mobile version of this as well. If you log in from a mobile device, it will default to the mobile interface. Brief overview of the system. We have devices in your vehicle that receive, so the flow from information is we receive position updates from GPS satellites, goes over a Verizon virtual private network, which means that it can't be seen by anybody else. It goes to a server that we maintain, and then the server feeds both the UI, the web page that I'm going to be spending most of my time on today, and then over in the far corner you see LiGO Access. LiGO Access is a suite of tools that we have developed that give you different visibilities into your data than you get through the web page. So we can do a little more, it's mostly post-processing. So if there are statistics or data elements that are important to you that aren't part of the standard reporting and eventing that you can get out of the web page, let us know. We can also use that to provide a live vehicle feed to, for example, if you have a ArcGIS feature class that other users are consuming. We can provide a live vehicle feed that will update that feature class at 2-minute intervals.
I'm going to turn the lights down completely.
I tried to turn them down. You can turn the other one off, and we can tell people if that's too dark.
I'll fall asleep.
Is that too dark?
A little. Yeah. The curtains behind you.
We could try, yeah, we could try raising some of the shades. See if that helps. Maybe the one in
Is that right in your eyes? Washington don't like that.
Well, this time of year, we're just not used to
I'm
it.
burning. Is that okay? Thanks. Yeah.
So, what you see when you log in, I'll go through the various elements of it pretty quickly. Over here, your list of vehicles. This little red insignia, or this little red icon, will turn green when the vehicles are live. It will turn yellow. There's 3 colors. Red is the vehicle is not sending updates. Green is the vehicle is actively sending updates. Yellow is the vehicle is on but hasn't received a valid position. Where you might see that is a vehicle that's kept in a garage overnight. Might take a couple of minutes because it doesn't get GPS in the garage, so it comes on and it takes a couple of minutes to figure out where it is. A vehicle that's been in maintenance might show yellow for a couple of minutes. Also a vehicle that has had the device unplugged for maintenance, particularly if that vehicle is moved. Because when the device first fires up, it goes back to the last recorded position, and that's where it thinks it is. If the satellites don't match, it takes it a couple of minutes to figure out, oh, wait a minute, I've moved, I'm somewhere else now, and then it will slowly update. So that's what those 3 mean. Any questions about that? Also, in your map, you have little insignia for individual vehicles. It won't be as big an issue during the trial period, but once we go full deployment, you're going to want to filter vehicles, and we'll show you how to do that later on. Because 1,500 vehicles, this is going to get very noisy and very busy. And where you see these big green circles, that means there are multiple vehicles in that location, but the vehicles are too close together to be shown individually.
If you zoom in, then you'll see the individual view.
Yeah.
As you zoom out,
You'll see a great big green circle. I'll get into what the tracks mean, but this is where you'll go if you want to see the history of a vehicle or you want to see what the vehicle is doing today. And as you can see, we've drawn on the map here what this vehicle did. So this vehicle left here and drove over to right by this park here. I'm sorry this slide is not as clear as I would like it to be, but across the top you have a menu. And we'll get into that a little bit more later on what's actually available in that menu. And then you have a map toolbar. Zoom tools, drop a point, clear tracks, and the area search are the critical ones up here, and I'll be addressing each one of those individually. And then down here on the bottom right now, we just show 2 tabs, events and geofences. You actually can put more tabs here. Each one of these tab pages can actually be dragged around. So if you want a great big map, you could drag all of these tabs up here and have them display across the top, and then each tab would display full screen for you. So that's very handy. The one that I use most often when I'm doing mine is the track points, because I want to see a lot of information all at once. And it's hard to do when you've got just that little tiny piece down at the corner. And then views. Views, remember I just said about how you're going to want to filter your vehicle? A view is how you do that. You create tags, you set a view up to only display certain vehicles, And you can very easily swap between views. This is a pull down. So for example, 50 vehicles or 60 vehicles that you're responsible for, you can create views that show maybe 10 at a time or 12 at a time, whatever the natural organization for you would be, and then you use your views to switch back and forth. You can always find a specific vehicle by typing in this search box right here. So even if you filter your vehicles to show, say you're responsible for 60, if you're only showing 20 in the current view, you can find any other vehicle that you need to find just by typing the identifying values in that search box, even if it's not displayed in the current view. It's kind of hard to see, but you see this vehicle is highlighted. You click a highlighted vehicle here, it'll highlight on the map, and the map will zoom in. You can also right-click and get a context menu for a vehicle. So if I select a vehicle, menu will pop up. Now, some of you, particularly when you log in as this KC Train, you're not going to see all of these options because KC Train is a limited privilege user. So the big one is you won't see edit user because that KC Train, because we're using that kind of as an introductory username, and because a lot of people have that, we've limited the editing privileges on that username. But you see you can zoom to street, zoom to city, and zoom to region. It's a shortcut for drawing the tracks for today, which is nice. And you can also, again, I talked about filtering vehicles. Here's a quick shortcut if you just want to see what this one vehicle is doing. You just select show only this and all the other vehicles disappear. So that's useful. Historic tracks. I talked about the tracks tab earlier. You use these two boxes here to filter your tracks, filter the time for your tracks, and you can go as big or as small as you want. You can go all the way back to when King County first installed its first vehicle, or you can look at just an hour. And what's nice is that when you draw the tracks, if you go multiple days, it'll draw a whole day. If you just want to see a really tight bound, you narrow your search down to an hour or 2 hours, and you'll see just the 1 or 2 hours that you're interested in. To choose which vehicles are shown, you pick you use the check boxes in the Vehicles tab, and then you'll see down here. One of the things that's really easy to do, particularly if you have a lot of vehicles, is it's easy to forget that you've got 3 or 4 vehicles selected. And so the black tracks that you see here. You can replay tracks for a day if you want to see, for example, if you want to see what a sweeper did. You can draw the tracks, but with sweepers and plows, sometimes they're going back and forth or along or around the same section over and over again. It's kind of hard to see that when you draw the tracks because it just turns into one great big black blob. If you do the replay, you can actually see the vehicle going up and down and up and down. And we used this once, City in Redmond, and we discovered that they were teaming their plows. So when we you can replay multiple tracks at once. So we replayed the tracks, and we noticed they were out individually. They all came back to the service center, and then they went out with one about 100 yards behind the other. And they did a dual plow. It was kind of cool to watch.
How did you get that box?
This is, you click the replay button, which is right here.
Because I can't read anything on that screen.
Oh,
So.
I'm sorry.
I'm thinking, Jay, is it possible to get a little break? Maybe try to use not the screen and use the board and back that thing up a little bit. It's really hard to see anything. Yeah, we could try that.
Give me a minute to go get my laptop.
Works.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that might work, huh?
Ooh. That's really good. Go back to this. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just need a minute.
Better. Yeah. Is what it is, I guess.
Is that any better? I don't think I have a way to get the projector pull out of the way.
Okay. But, a little bit better. It's a little hard to see, but.
Ah, thank you. Not quite tall enough. So that's there. It's sort of the number 3 arrow is pointing at where the replay button is. I know it's kind of hard to see. And also on this dialog, you can set the time period. So you can do, it goes from, I think it's the lowest is 5 seconds all the way up to 10 minutes. You can start and stop, and you can fast forward. This is also handy if you want to see where a vehicle was at a particular time during the day. This is the easiest way. You just replay. Then you can use a slider bar to run back and forth across the times that the vehicle was active and stop around where you want to see what it was doing at a particular time. This is, yeah, question.
Does it show the speed of the vehicle along the track?
Not here, but there will be a way, we'll show you in a minute, that you can see speed at a particular point. You can also click, well, there's 2 ways to do that. One is you can display the track points, which I'll get to in a minute. The other is any place you see one of these arrowheads, you can actually click there and there's a little pop-up box that will show you the spot speed for that vehicle at that time. So I just talked about setting the time period, the start and stop button. And so track points, you asked about speed. If you know what time it was, it's kind of hard to see, but this is a time column, and there's the speed at that time. So that'll give you, that's the other way that you can find. You can also see here in this pop-up box or this call-out box, the speed is displayed there as well.
So you can just mouse along the track anywhere and that
Yeah,
pop up?
you just mouse along the track. You have to click.
Yeah.
It won't pop up. You have to click. And what you have to be careful of is, it's kind of hard to see in the screenshot, but the vehicle actually went down and then came back. So you have to make sure that you have to check the time here, the timestamp, which is right here, because it's sometimes hard to click on the right direction. So you have to check the time. When you have a situation like this where the vehicle went down and back, it's usually easier to go open up the track points tab and then find the times that you're interested in and do it that way. If the vehicle makes a loop or a circle where you don't have the bidirectionality, then clicking on the track is probably quicker.
So the use cases that I use it a lot in is that you see this track, right? You typically draw days worth of track, generally speaking, and then you see where it's all over the place, and it's visually hard to sort of see how their day went because they're practical this way and that way. So the replay gives you this replay. You can sort of see it went up, down, over, and back and forth. There's lots of times you'll see people going back and forth from, say, out somewhere to back to the office and back again. So, they're like, it is what it is, right? But you can maybe, if you're a manager or whatever, you say, why are we going back and forth 3 or 4 times? You're just looking at the track itself. It's hard to visualize that.
Yeah, I also use that we have a company that's running dump trucks that are going back and forth between the job site and the dump site. And over the course of a day, that route, it's really, you just have lots and lots and lots and lots of lines going back and forth. It's really hard to tell at any particular point during the day, well, what were they doing? So again, that's where it's, So now I'm going to talk about the mapping tools. briefly. The search tool, you click the tool to make it active, and then left click and drag, and it'll draw a box for you, and it will zoom in to the box that you draw. I talked about what Clear Map does. If you've drawn tracks on your map, Clear Map makes the tracks go away, and then I'll talk about the area search in a little more detail.
Oh, that's a little blue. Okay, I see.
You can also switch back and forth between a map view and a satellite view. One thing to be alert to in the satellite view is that if you zoom in very, very tight, it goes from a bird's eye view to a slant view. You can change it back to a bird's eye view if you want to, but just be aware that you'll get this. You notice here, you're not looking directly down. I believe this is Baker Street Light Rail Station. So you'll just look just slightly slanted. You can put trails on your vehicles. You pick it over here, it'll show the last couple minutes worth of tracks. So just as a red.
Sorry, you took it over where?
You just select the vehicle in your vehicle list, and it will automatically display the recent history in the map. Just shows where it's been the last couple minutes.
Where the there's at the very top there's this little button that says trace on, trace off. Turn that off.
Oh, yeah. Show trace. Little checkbox up here.
So by default, the trace is on. It just gives you a little tail. I call it a tail. That sort of indicates movement. See if they're not moving.
And if you select multiple vehicles, you'll see trails for all the selected vehicles, all the active vehicles.
So if I selected the vehicle and there's no trace, that means it's been sitting the whole time?
Well, it's been sitting for the last couple minutes, yeah. Or it could have been, yeah, or the engine is off. If the ignition is off and the device is no longer reporting, the trace will go away.
Okay.
So, area search is, you click the button, you draw a box, and then it will give you a list of all the vehicles that have been in that box in the time period that you select up here from and to. This is really useful and important. We have used this tool to verify complaints or to exonerate from complaints, where somebody says, hey, your vehicle threw gravel all over my car and I want a new paint job. Do the area search, you get the time and the location, you can say, no, there were no vehicles. There were no King County vehicles in that. And we actually did this for a customer. They took it to the insurance company, and the insurance company backed off immediately. They also took it to the state police, and the state police said, yeah, you're right, your vehicle was nowhere near where this guy says the damage was occurred. So this is a really powerful, powerful tool for both finding the drivers who are doing things they're not supposed to do and exonerating drivers from complaints.
Yeah.
You can filter this on event rules. I'll go into event rules a little bit more in a minute, but so there's additional filtering you can use. And then if you click a particular vehicle over here, it will show what the vehicle did actually inside the search. So you can see, you can draw the tracks that the vehicle drove through the search area that you draw. Street view, this is Terry's favorite feature. It actually shows the satellite view and then down in the bottom what the driver sees. So you actually get a windshield view of what the driver would be seeing. Now, the thing about this, it's not live, obviously, because you don't have cameras in your trucks. But this is the Google Street View still from where the vehicle is located.
So it shows that from what's the drop down?
Windows. You go to Windows,
Okay.
and then in Windows you'll see Street View as one of the options. And then to close it, all of these pop-ups have the standard Windows X in the upper right corner to close them. Most of them also have a minimize button, and if you minimize, it shows along the bottom here as a minimized window, and then you can click on it to bring it back up. All right, so what else can you do with this other than oh cool, I can see where my vehicles are and watch them drive around King County. Alarms, events, and notifications are a key piece of what we do with the software. So alarms are things that you want to know about right away. Is a vehicle speeding? Has a vehicle had an excessive acceleration event that might indicate there's been an accident? Those kinds of things. Those are what alarms are. And they'll show up as a little flashing red icon, or we can do it with the icon doesn't flash. So, and then down the bottom here, you can see what's going on.
How do you get to alarm?
I'll show you that in a minute. We'll get into that. So the way you create an alarm is when you create the event that's driving the alarm, like an idling event or a speeding event. In the event setup, which I'll get to in a minute, you tell it you want this to be an alarm, an alert, something that pops up immediately. You can also do notifications, where not only does it pop up on the map, but you can send an email out to somebody, supervisor or maintenance manager or something. Reporting, I thought I had the event slide in here. I didn't, sorry about that. We have some sort of out-of-the-box reports that are already created for your install. Reports can be done ad hoc, where you just go to the reports menu, which is in the web page. If you've got the web page up, reports will be, I think it's either the first or the second menu in the upper left-hand corner. You can generate a report ad hoc, or we can set up a schedule where reports will be mailed daily or weekly. Some of the common ones, a trip and idle report. A trip is when the vehicle is in use. Idle, and there's a key difference between idle and idling. Idle is the vehicle is stopped somewhere and not in use. Idling, ing, means that the vehicle is stopped with the engine running. So it's burning fuel but not moving. That's the difference between those. The meaning of having very high idle time or having very high trip time depends on the mission of the vehicle. For a maintenance vehicle, what you really want is you want lots and lots and lots of idle time, because that means the technicians are out doing work, they're not driving around. For a street sweeper or a trash truck, you want almost no idle time, because the street sweeper is only productive when it's moving. So we leave it to you guys to determine whether high idling or high trip volume is correct. Time on site, I'll get into points of interest. This is, if you have a landfill or something like that, you can tell how long your vehicles are spending. It looks like you got a gravel yard down the hill there. You can tell how long vehicles are in the gravel yard, those kinds of things. That's what the time on site does. Vehicle utilization, again, this is a critical one. We can tell you how often your vehicles are used for a month or a week. We can tell you how many hours it's used, how many miles it's been traveled. You can use this to justify both adding new vehicles to your fleet if you're approaching, your vehicles are approaching 100% utilization, or you can use it to, if you need to reduce your fleet size for whatever reason, you can say, well, what vehicles aren't being used a lot? Where can we maybe do a shared vehicle or something like that? One of the nice things about the vehicle utilization is it not only tells you how much, it can also tell you when. So if you have 3 or 4 vehicles that aren't being used a lot, and when they are in use, the times don't conflict, that maybe tells you that you can compress that down and maybe have one vehicle that's shared among 3 or 4 different users. Speeding on harsh driving, again, critical for safety of your drivers. And productivity is similar to trip and idle. It basically tells you how much a vehicle is being used. Harsh driving is based on all of the devices have accelerometers in them. And so harsh driving is based on accelerometer exceedances, is what we call them. So a harsh braking is forward. So.
Question.
Yes.
For the speeding report, the system will know if it is a 35-mile-per-hour zone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do both. We can do, and actually we have 3 ways of doing speeding. We can do it a hard cap, like you never want a vehicle to go over 65 miles an hour regardless. We can do a speed limit. We can pick up the speed limit from the underlying road and tell you if it exceeds that limit. We can also immediately, to get an even more immediate, excuse me, we can actually put a hard limit right on the device itself. And there you get an immediate report. So there's 3 different ways we can do that. Typically, they'll use just the ones at the server level. That gives you a lot more flexibility. The ones on the device we can change, but it's a lot harder and it takes longer, typically. Yes?
I got one question.
Sure.
For the productivity reports, if I wanted to know how many times, how many trips a driver took to like McDonald's, is that something I can do?
Yes, very easily.
Driver versus asset, that's a different
Or
question.
asset? Yeah.
Well, we're actually recording vehicle movement. So who's driving the vehicle, we may or may not know.
Yeah. So there's nothing in the program to like assign to daily, assign a driver to?
We do have driver logging capabilities. It's not part of the pilot.
We're going to look at that down the road, Sean. That may be something that they have available to put in scan cards or whatnot.
Right.
Once we get things up and going and get them some of it more, finding out what we need, we may be adding that. But that is available now.
And one of the things you can do, if we do go down that road, one of the things you can do is in your map interface where the list of vehicles is, you can also put a list of drivers. So you can see who's driving which vehicle.
If it doesn't change.
I think moving forward, as Chris was just saying, there's this possibility of using your ID cards to scan in drivers. You know who's driving the driver ID.
So does that mean that the vehicle won't start until somebody scans it in? And
No, we have not gone to that level yet.
We typically put a buzzer in there, and it'll allow buzzers, of course, you to scan your card.
And then the buzzer.
Out of scope for now.
Before we move on, I wanted to say one thing about the reports here. Jay sort of gave a highlight of the reports. There's a bunch more standard reports that come to the system, and then there's a bunch of templates that can be, I don't know who will have permission to edit reports, but they can be edited, so you can create your own customized reports. That has that key. All right.
Carefully afterwards, Sean.
So talking about the trip and idle report, basically it's a summary. So you can see this vehicle traveled 35 miles. The max speed recorded was 45 miles an hour. Duration idle, the vehicle was stopped. Of the 11 of the day, it was stopped for about 7 hours and it was driving for about 4.5 hours.
So this is a good report for, I guess, a manager for the most part. So this idle is not engine idle. And so engine idle, from a fleet perspective and from an organization perspective, is important. People want to manage that these days, mostly reduce, 2 things, reduce fuel costs, it's a key thing, and then also reduce the pollution, air pollution, and global warming. But this is vehicle idle. So the percentage rate down there at the end really gives you quick, if you're responsible for driving, that's your job duty, so to speak, or your kinds of things that you want to be driving a lot, then it tells you want to have a low idle percentage. You want to be sitting around all day. But if you're somebody's fixing signs, for instance, or supposed to be working on signs, then you don't want them driving every day. You want them working. So that percentage just gives you a quick view of if they're how much time they're spending driving versus the vehicle life. So depending on what their job responsibility is, how close they're doing.
The trip is just key on to key off, right?
Yeah.
So that's a different definition. A trip for us is like you went from Cedar Hills to the transfer station and back. So that would involve geofences. So are there any reports after we set up geofences that would give us the information from that point of view? Because they might turn the key off at the transfer station to use the restroom or something, and then, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a trip to us.
Right, yes. Once we have the geofences established, we can do that.
Okay.
So we talked about the vehicle utilization. This is a monthly report, used 7 days, 95 trips, 300 miles. So if you guys have, if King County has a standard for vehicle usage to justify keeping that vehicle in your fleet, this report will tell you, and you can set the period up however you need to, for whatever interval you need to report it at to do your justification that you need to do.
So all reports can be run by depending on what's set up. Allow people to put it that way. You can allow, generally it's allowed, the standard is a month, a week, or a day reports, and then you can set up a custom range. And so some of those can be set so they're saved just as a daily one, and the administrator set that so you can't change that. But generally speaking, most of the reports out of the box that you'll be able to use, you'll have the choice of running it by the day, by the month, by the week, by the day.
Speeding report, talked about this. On where you see this funny little icon, if you click that icon, it'll draw a track on the map and zoom to it for where this event was. So if you, we actually have, we have a customization of this report that actually shows, you'll see there's no speed column in here. But if you click on it and draw the track on the map, you can click on the endpoints of the track and see the speed at the start and the end of the event. So that's useful. And the other thing to look at is the addresses. If it's actually driving on the freeway, it'll tell you that it's driving on the freeway. So maybe those would be of less concern than the speeding event down here, which is on a city street.
Typically, the speed report is set to by the speed limit on the road. Generally, these are customizable, but and then you typically set 5 or 10 miles over, right? You want to get a lot of noise. Some limit over because you don't want to get it every time they go 1 mile an hour.
And you can also set a minimum duration. So, for example, if you want your vehicles, if somebody's passing on the interstate or something like that, you might want to say, I don't want to see a speeding event until the speed limit's been exceeded for 30 seconds or 15 seconds or a minute. That also, again, helps reduce the noise and helps get rid of, the little blips and excursions. So geofences, we just talked about this in context of a trip. Geofences are drawn on the map, and you can report either inside or outside. So, and you can report times and trips. Geofences are grouped. You see up in the upper corner there, you can add or change groups. You can add or remove geofences. This is how they display. And then if you pick a group, if you select a group and highlight it, all of the geofences in that group will draw on your map, or you can click on an individual geofence and draw the individual geofence on the map. To create a new geofence, in the last slide, the plus geofence button, if you click the plus geofence button, the default is a circle, and you just click on your map where you want the circle, where you want the center of the circle to be, then you set a radius. The latitude and longitude will be the center of the circle, and then you apply a name and a description, and then pick your group. And and you can either manually type in a radius if you want an exact, or you can pull the circle around if you need to. If you click the drop down by geofence, you'll get a list of options for ways that you can create geofences. If you pick polygon, you just click, 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 and then when you come back to your starting point and click on your starting point, it'll close the polygon for you. And there's your polygon. You can also do it by a route. And again, you just click along the route and then double click at the end. You'll notice that you can set a buffer along the route, and the buffer radius is right there. So you can say, for example, if your geofence is I-5, you want to make your buffer wide enough to encompass the entire width of the freeway, which in some places is a lot of space.
So could we set this type of route for our trip to the lake and back?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And can you give a business case of grouping?
Grouping, again, it's a way of limiting the information that you see.
But like,
Remember-
how does somebody use it?
For geofences?
For geofences?
Yeah, you showed us group first. So
Okay.
A good example is, for geofences, is Parks and Rec. They have 1,000 geofences, so you may want to group those into different types of geofences. Instead of just seeing them all, you just want to be able to turn on and off the group versus turning on and off every individual part.
like north or south or whatever?
Or north or south.
And the other thing, that the other use of groups is when you create your geofences for inside and outside, you can filter on the group that the geofence is in. So you can have an inside for every geofence in your system. You can have an inside for just a small subset of geofences. And the third thing that groups do is they control the display. When you click a group, you're going to see every single geofence in that group drawn on the map. Fair warning, if you have lots of geofences over a wide area, it's going to zoom to the full extent. The map is going to zoom to the full extent of all of your geofences. And where I've gotten caught by that, I'm going to tell tales on myself here, is I'm looking at a vehicle track and I want to see what geofences the vehicle track is in. Well, if you draw the track first and then draw the geofences, you're suddenly zoomed way out and then you have to zoom way back in on your track. Draw the geofences first, then draw the track and it'll zoom to the track. So, and that's one where you might want to maybe divide the county up into sections, particularly if you have, like Parks and Rec, as Terry said, where you have lots and lots of geofences. You might want to group them either geographically or by function or
By district.
by district, by Parks District.
Just as a note, I'm in the training database here, there is no add geofences set up, so they don't have the privilege to add geofences in the training.
Oh, okay.
So you won't see the add geofences unless you're training.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't
Can you
set it
add
up.
it?
Huh?
Can you add it?
You'll all get your own username and password. The training site is so you can see all the vehicles in the pilot and you can run reports on that. You'll get your own username and password and that'll be delivered by Donna probably early next
Okay.
week. So
Okay, so
Yes.
let's just tell the things, we all need to get together and discuss this. Please don't everybody start putting in titles, events, alarms, geofences. We need to get together and have an informed decision on what we want to do and not just everybody doing their own thing, okay? Yeah?
So,
Also, if you want, we can do a quick webinar to kind of guide you through that. That would be great, yeah.
and the privilege granting can be very fine-grained. Down to the individual, or by group or by role. It's all role-based, just like, any other software. The security is all role-based, and we can expand or contract permissions based on role, and then we can move people in and out of roles. The one thing to be aware of, and this might be deeper than we need to go into here, but the roles are additive.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you have a person who's assigned multiple roles, they're going to get all of the privileges of all of the roles that they're assigned to. That's important to know, because if you're looking for why you do or don't have a specific function that you need to have, you need to go through and look at all of your roles. And there are some privileges that actually take things away from users.
Okay.
And that's where knowing all the roles that you're in, if just one role has that particular take that right away, then you won't get it.
Gotcha.
Also, if you're going to be an administrator, you won't get your administrator privileges until you come to training.
Okay.
It's important that you don't do things that you don't necessarily know what you're going to do. So I think training is scheduled online, hopefully for next week, or figure that out.
Okay. So if we go back to our sites right now and we're all looking on this on Casey Train, it doesn't really matter what we do.
Right. That's the point of it. It's kind of like a dummy
It's a very limited privileges.
One more thing in the geofence is, I don't know if you're going to mention this about that, is that you can create your own. You already have geofences, your boundaries, those kinds of things that ArcGIS and your GIS system can import as well. So you can start creating your own operation very quick.
Yeah. So very quickly, you were talking about, so the geofence expression, when you're creating your event, talked about groups. You set up your expression by group, and then you pick whether the event is they're inside the geofence or outside the geofence. Use case for outside, Sound Transit, just up the road here, they have set up, basically they set up a geofence around the light rail tracks, and there are certain vehicles that they want to know if they go outside, because they're never supposed to be more than that distance away from. So that's where, and that's a use case for a route geofence. We actually created a route geofence along light rail all the way up to UW now, and we'll have to extend it up to North Gate, down to Angle Lake. So they want their vehicles to be just in that one narrow spot, and they actually get notified.
So does that mean it like derailed if it goes outside?
No, these are their maintenance trucks.
Oh, okay.
Their maintenance trucks or their science trucks. They don't want them, driving off. The one we see most there's a little sandwich shop that must be where all the Sound Transit people go to eat. If you look at where they're leaving the geofence, it's all down in this one little area of Celsius. So. And then you can set a notification. This is what, so when you set the alarm, what this does is when they do leave the geofence, and I apologize for it being hard to see, but you can actually see as soon as they leave the geofence, this little red highlight pops up, and it alerts you right away. So if somebody's watching the map, they'll get an immediate alert. And this is where you set that all up.
Are there also options for like email notifications?
Yes. Yeah. An email notification. If I go back to this alarm notification, when you click the plus button, you'll get a drop down, and it'll say email notification, and then you just set it up. Emails are by tag and not by individual. So if you want to have emails go to just one person, you have to create a tag where that person is the only member of that group. Again, one thing to be aware of, the reason I emphasize that is because one of the most common complaints you'll get is somebody saying, I'm getting all these emails and I don't want them anymore. You have to know how to go in, or you have to know where to go to change that. So a tag is a group of people. And that also might mean you have to create a new tag, though, because if you've got 4 different notifications all going to the same 4 or 5 people, and one of those people says, well, I want to receive these 3 but not number 4, that means you have to create a separate tag, one that gets all 4 and one that gets just 3. Or you can create a tag for just the one.
Are you going to cover tags?
I don't think I have any tag-specific slides because the KC Train I don't think has it.
I think maybe just to explain the idea briefly, think of a tag as a tag, and you can put on that tag a business rule, like anytime you leave the yard, I'd like an alert. and put that on the tag, and you tag that to people, and you tag it to vehicles, so that for that person, that becomes an event. So it's a really flexible way to manage different flags, emails, alarms that you want to tag on a human or an asset. So think of it that way. It's very flexible, and as you go into events, it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, and everything is based on, like I say, everything is based on tags. So you can use tags to control speeding. For example, if you want to give your small lightweight vehicles, you want to allow them to go a little faster than your trash trucks. You don't want you might want to have a very tight bound on your trash trucks. You might want to be looser on your pickups, because a speeding pickup is not as much of a hazard as a speeding trash truck. Or a speeding pickup maybe means something different than a speeding trash truck. The way you would control that is you would have different events, and the way you control what vehicle the event applies to is through tags. And the same way with the notification. Not everybody's going to want to see trash truck speeding events. The parks people probably don't care. So then the way you control that is when you set your event up, you set your notifications up to different tags. So that the speeding on the trash trucks go to the people who care about fast trash trucks. The speeding on the parks vehicles go to the people who care about those parks.
Yeah, some of these things are not sort of a challenge, right? Some of these are administrative tools. So there's this concept of events, which is the whole system is sort of event-driven, whether it's speeding events or idling events. Those are sort of business tools. You can set those up in this thing called an event entity. You guys won't, in the training, don't have access to that because that's an administrator function. So they're talking about these event things. So the system comes with a set of preset events, speeding, aggressive driving, there's some geofence events, and a series of events that are all set up. But the user, and I use that word loosely in the sense of King County, can create as many events and business rules as they want to track it. And within those events, that's where you set up those alarms and notifications that Jay now. In the training, you won't even database that you're looking at now. You don't see events. I mean, there's some things that will happen in there that are already preset, but you guys don't have access to that to even see what events are in there necessarily set up for you. So that's sort of the challenge. The same thing with tags. There's usually the administrator will have an ability to there's a tag drop down or a tag entity when you create different groupings, and once again, you won't see that in your database, and the same thing with you. So,
this is just an introduction. Every single topic, I'm sure, could have another hour or more on.
Yeah.
So we can just get the overview, just see some friends, and then we'll schedule follow-up.
Yeah, but just the outside geofence would be how you would configure your trip. You would create a geofence around the start point, and then you create your event as an outside geofence. It'll tell you when they leave, and it'll tell you when they come back, even if they start or stop in between. And time and area. So this is reporting by, actually a parks vehicle, reporting all of the different parks that they visited and how long they spent in each park. Points of interest, just like everything else, it's a dockable tag. The difference between a point of interest and a geofence is a geofence has 3 dimensions. Point of interest is a single point. You can do proximity, but you can't do inside or outside because there is no concept of inside or outside in the map. The categories, you'll see the points of interest. It's a way of sorting them. And I just created this. I don't even know if Chuck's Donuts is actually still there. Google claims it is.
Yeah. They had closed for a while when a truck recently drove through their front window. Somebody hit gas and the brakes by mistake, but they're reopened.
So again, you just click on the map, and it will the icon will pick the color of the group that you, or the group that you, or the category rather, the category that you apply. it'll pick up the color of whatever category you apply. So this is a way of creating not area-wide, but point-by-point things that are important to you. And I figured Chuck's Donuts is probably pretty important. So, and time on site, when you set up your time on site, this is based on points of interest, and you can set a different radius. So is it, within 100 feet, within 50 feet, within 5 feet?
Wait, so you said time on site is based on points of interest,
Yes.
so not geofence?
Not geofence.
Okay.
Well, you could set it up either points of interest or geofence.
So let me just touch base on that real quickly. So there's sort of like points of interest are designed to be like an address or something like a point feature. So if you want to track time at a hydrant or some sort of feature, and then geofences are sort of an area. And with a point of interest, you can set a radius. So when it comes within a certain distance of this point that you can pick, and that could be an address if you want to use that, or it could be an asset, that kind of thing. And then the geofences, you define what that area is. And so there's sort of it's not a black and white thing. There's a good reason for using points of interest. It is sort of an area, right? You're defining that area. Sometimes you want to use a geofence, and sometimes you want to use a combination. So learning a little bit more about the details of the pros and cons of those, and sometimes you want to use a combination.
Okay, but you can get the time on either of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing you can is you can't get time outside. You can only do with geofences.
Oh, yeah.
You can't do outside point of interest.
Gotcha.
You can only do, because it's a proximity thing.
Right.
So.
Can you get data, but can you get a notification when you cross into a point of interest, or is that just a geofence?
I actually don't know. Well, if you created an event that's based on proximity to a point of interest, and then you set up an alert based on the event that emails you that, yeah. So if you wanted to know, now that I've got Chuck's Donuts, if you want an email when somebody goes to the donut shop, because you like your creme brulee a certain way, or you want a latte instead of a drip coffee, you can watch, you get an alert when they're at the donut shop, and then you can call them and say, hey, get me this instead of that.
We're all about business.
Hey, first things first, right? You got to get your coffee and you got to get your Boston cream donut.
Yeah.
Online, we do have an online support website, so I want to go through this very quickly. Here's the URL. We'll publish this out to you guys so you can get access to it. You will have to create an account. So I don't know if we're going to limit that initially or not.
Initially, I think we want all the questions and support stuff to go through Donna. So if you have questions on those kinds of things, this is the pilot kind of.
We're collecting information about the pilot, so we need to know how it's going, and that's the best way to do that, is to learn what questions you have. And so if you send via email to Donna Luzar at county.gov and CC Nora, so that we keep our communication open.
And then once we hopefully get to the full deployment, we'll be the website and other things.
Yeah, and you can get to the knowledge base in the forums without signing in, just like any other website. Forums, you can't contribute to the forum unless you have an account or signed in, but you can search the forums, search the knowledge base. If you're having problems, and this is probably for Donna, at least initially, you can create a case right online. You can also look at your open cases. This is what the case looks like. Title is freeform. You just type in whatever you're having a problem with. Case type, problem, issue, just like any other standard support website. And then a description of what's going on. And then pick a subject. These are probably where you're going to have most of your, if you have issues, it's going to be one of these three. And then we have the catch-all general. It doesn't map well to any of these titles. Just pick general and go for it. And then once you've created a case, it'll show up in your My Open Cases, and then you can click on the case number to get back to the editing form and see any status updates, any updates that we've supplied from our support people, as they review the case and look into it, they'll update the status of the case.
So do you only see cases that you entered, or like solid waste?
Either.
We see.
Either
like,
you
when I see
can,
what's
you
on
can
it
see,
entered
you can see my open cases, you can see all open cases,
Okay.
or you can see all cases.
and- Okay,
So,
given your
And this
permission
is-
then.
yeah.
And so this will be only available to people that we go through you to set up, right?
Correct.
So you, Nora, will have access to this for the pilot, okay? But you'll have access to the knowledge base of the forum, so you can go look stuff up, you can find the answer yourself, right? And then once we're done with the pilot, then we would turn that on.
So I'll get to mobile and dispatch in just a minute because we had some questions about it, but this is contact information. We'll try to get this out in a paper form to everybody. So if you have follow-on questions, things that you want to have covered, you can cover. Dispatch.
Again, go through Donna.
Okay.
That's why I'm there, yeah.
Dispatch is a way of sending a job from an office to a vehicle. The driver, the operator, or the person you're sending the job to has to be an operator in LiGO. That's the only restriction. In the office, you add a new job. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because we're running out of time. You can create a job. You can click on the map, create the job here, or you can start a route because you can create jobs along a route if you need to. And assign it to whoever you want to assign it to down at the bottom there. And then you can add, you can find workers nearby. You know, if you have a hydrant that's flooding, you can see who's nearby that might have equipment that they need. And then you dispatch it, and you'll see, you can put a due date, and if it's late, you'll see it shows up there as late. And then again, then you can go look at your jobs, and as they complete them, I'll show you the mobile side in just a minute. The worker can actually go in and acknowledge that the job is complete or not. And then you can, once you have all the jobs together, if you're doing a group, you can optimize a route for them. And they will actually get this route on their mobile device. I'll tell them. We don't have voice turn by turn yet, but we do have, you know, they can see the best way to drive to visit all of the sites.
And Jay, really quick, if that's on your mobile phone, you could also use Google Maps, right?
Yes.
I mean, that would be the ideal, right? You can have that app open and you can Google Maps and check traffic, so.
Right. Right. So when you've individual job or a route, you can see. I think this is handy. So for example, for your trash trucks, every 2 weeks, you create a route and you just schedule it to run either weekly or every week or however often you run. If your street sweepers are on a schedule, you can do this as well. So you create a trash route or a sweeper route once and then just reassign it as you need to. On the phone or the mobile device, tablet, whatever, this is what the mobile user will see. Again, just like everything else, there's a login. And then the mobile interface, it's a little hard to see, but down here in the corner, there'll be a place where they have to click to see their jobs. And when they click the little expand tab, this is what they see. They see dispatch, and you can see the you can actually show traffic inside mobile. I didn't hit that, but there is in the both in the web page and here, there's a button you can click that will show you where your traffic issues are. So again, if you're dispatching somebody or you want to know why all of your vehicles suddenly stopped, you can go and you can see that I-5 is red. which it is about 12 hours a day now, but another complaint. So, and then the driver will look at his jobs, and then he'll say, I started this job, and the status will change to in progress. And then when they're done, they can come back in and say that they're done. Complete job, when you complete the job, you can put notes for whatever happened. And then back in the office, you can get a report. You notice it's sorted by vehicle, how many jobs they did, how long they spent at each job. Again, this is important for productivity. You know, if you have a job that you think should take an hour and a half and somebody says they did it in 10 minutes, well, either you've got a really good worker or they skipped something or so the duration is important. And I think that's it. Questions, comments? And we've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to turn the WebEx over to Terry, and he can do some live stuff for you.
So in the training viewer, using a metro, are you seeing a lot of metro vehicles in the training?
Oh. Terry, you're presenter, so you need to share your screen.
So on the module right now? A truck in Carnation, one in Bellevue. My trailer, CC008, is that Tiger Mountain? Tiger Mountain.
Well, it's in the parking lot somewhere close to there, you know what I mean? I think it's that.
Probably from that.
I know that on the limit.
Yeah, Cedar Hill.
I thought it was on the deadline.
Yeah, it is.
It's probably sitting at
It was sitting on the deadline when I left this morning.
But yes, I do see a lot of vehicles added since.
No, I know what I need to do. I need to.
Yeah, and EV.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, Jim, I did showing him sitting on the deadline.
There we go. That's you. I just had to move. I had to get you over onto the projector.
And how did you change it to street view from that? Oh, take it satellite.
So Kathy, we have a mower online now for your group. It's one of the big Toro mowers. So that's the only one that Pro Park is in there right now. But there'll be the rest probably in the next week.
Okay.
Are
you going to send out the link to the site?
Yes, so once it has it on Monday. I think they're there.
You don't have to settle
So,
it.
Donna and Nora, during this trial phase, I know we wanted to learn as much and test it out as part of the software. Are there particular use cases that you would like us to try, like this?
Yeah, you'll get that.
Okay.
Get your username.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so for right now, the training's going to be open. That site is open to anybody, and it has all of the cars and the pilot in it. And then you'll have your own unique one. Depending on your role, you'll probably have different uses that you're going to try. So we need to make sure everyone's trained and ready to do that before we get.
Right.
And then the PCIT technical team is going to actually go through our requirements that we provided as part of the RFP and test against all our requirements. So
Oh, great.
the user side and then the technical.
Thanks.
We realize we can't train everyone in an hour and a half, so we're just trying to take a little bit at a time.
And so, you know, part of that probably would be kind of strategic to try to make sure that we get vehicles on Vashon, back home-ish, everywhere we can hit that have problems with other things, to see how they pick up the track. Because of the breadcrumbs and how they work, it's, then that's why you'll see that some of these are really technically go everywhere.
And the devices in the vehicle do a sort forward. So if they go out of cell range, they will continue to do all of the normal tracking and reporting. As soon as they can find a signal again, they'll blast all of that stored information back up. And we've actually tested that. There's a canyon in Idaho that the vehicles basically disappear when they go in. And then when they come out the other end, you can see where they drove through the canyon because the track. And generally, GPS is not an issue. I worked in Alaska for a lot of summers, and there were places in Alaska where you could not even get GPS.
We struggle with, one of the, probably the biggest struggles we have is going to Sky Home. And it's up Glenski Pass.
Okay.
Through that, different areas to get up there, a lot of in and out. So it's good because the sheriff and then some of the other ones. And then we have a small little transfer station up there and a road group up there too. So we're just kind of checking to get to that information.
Yeah, I don't think they'll lose GPS. They may very well lose cell.
I think that's also going to be the issue.
Yeah. I know it wasn't that long ago that I was working in downtown Seattle and couldn't get a cell signal.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that would never happen. I thought it already go do that.
Well, we figured out we were in the shadow of the viaduct. That if you're standing in the yeah.
You'll know cell service down below.
So, but they will do store forward, which is important because then even though you might lose the near real time updating, you will still have all of the information after the fact for the reporting and any events that happen to occur because the information that the server needs to generate the events is all generated by the device itself. So all of that information generation is all going on. So anything that happened while it was out of cell coverage, you'll get all of those at once as well when the information comes through.
So I think Michael was telling us yesterday that it's about 2 hours worth of activity.
No, it'll actually do much, it'll probably do a day's worth or 2 days worth of activity.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things we do is smart tracking, which helps give both high-quality tracks and reduces the amount of information that the device has to send, which reduces the amount of information it actually has to store.
So how often does it send?
It's either 500 meters, or when it's turning our standard is every 30 degrees. We have gone tighter on turns for some vehicles where it's important to not lose a corner, like a sweeper or snowplow. We'll take the turn radius down to 5 or 10 degrees because we really want to see exactly where they're moving as they turn. On most city streets, we get most of our events from turns. On freeways, you'll get the distance-based position updating. The other thing that we have done, because it was customer asked for it, is we've actually done a report when the vehicle stops completely.
That's primarily to try to get those stopping events for like stop signs and stoplights. So if there should be an accident in there, you can show that they either stopped or didn't stop.
And that's not something that we create an event over because it would just be way too much noise. But the information is there. We can go back to that day and we can tell you, if the question is, there's a stop sign here, did the vehicle stop? Because we have a point, the device sends a point. We do that at the device level. So when the device senses that the speed has dropped below, I think it's like 1.5 miles an hour, it just sends a point. So we know that we have that recorded in the system. So we can go back to that and say, did they stop or did they not stop?
So the system we're using now, when I go to look at where a vehicle is, sometimes it's 3 or 4 or 5 minutes behind the actual time.
The only time that a vehicle would go that long without reporting would be, I'm trying to think, if it's on Benny Way, for example, where there's lots of traffic lights, but the vehicle isn't turning. It might take it to, it might have to go through half a dozen lights to get 500 yards because the lights are pretty closely spaced. That would be the only case where it would go longer than 2 or 3 minutes without sending a decision.
As soon as it gets a point, which is sometimes down to every second, just as long as it takes to get up through the Verizon tunnel, up to the server, and then through your internet connection back to your computer. So it's usually relatively fast. So it's usually within. The other day we were doing a demonstration for somebody out in Modesto, California. And anyway, we had it was a live demo. So we had somebody in our office driving around. They wanted to see alerts going through the geofence. We had a little geofence around our office. And Rep was, one of our employees was driving around. We were in California. We could see it live, and he goes, okay, and I'm going to turn into the office. And as soon as he said that, the vehicle, the symbol turned, and he drove into the office, and the event went off. So it's almost, we call it near real time. But,
and if you use a symbology like you see here, where you can, it's not just a circle, it's a rectangle. You can actually see the direction the vehicle is moving because the icon will turn to reflect the actual heading of the vehicle. So this vehicle, wherever it is, it's parked, but it's parked facing that way. And so you can see, as if you don't have any tracks or tails, you don't have the traces or the tracks, you can still see which direction the vehicle is moving based on the display of the icon. And that's really useful too. You can see when they're turning. And the turns update really quickly.
If we noticed while Jay was just talking, that icon, that connection icon, so if we separate this out, it says connection. So that's whether it's red, they're all red. So there's most of those, they're all off, I guess, and most of those, we'll talk about here in a second, are not even, we haven't even installed yet here. But this one just came live again, just turned green. So once again, they're all, and it indicates basically engine off. And when it turns green, that's engine on. So this 171, I don't know what these vehicles are. So I can right click to 171. I had been clicking this 078, and that was on, and then it went off. And now we can see it's going 1 mile an hour. So if I right-click on this toolbar here, there's a number of other things I can display up on my toolbar. So by default, speed is not listed up there. I just went up here and right-clicked on this toolbar, and I checked the speed button just so we can see what that's on.
Okay.
And now I'm going to right-click on this one, and I'm going to zoom to street level, and it's going to zoom me over to 171, whatever vehicle that is.
It's the Metro vehicle, Metro transit.
Okay. So they're just starting up and sit here and watch it.
That's not what we do in this system.
Oh, wow, Betsy, it just does us a trail. Yeah.
This is a little tail, we call tail, just shows you that it's moving, gives you a feel for moving, but it's not a real track. So you'll see sometimes that the trail will go across or a building, whatever. So
Well, yeah, we noticed that when our trailer came out, when we put it on the other day.
if you draw the track will be accurate, but the tail is just sort of more of a visual thing.
Yeah.
And if you get follow selected, if it goes off the screen, then it'll adjust your screen. See if I drop it, just click the button. Just follow selected, the vehicle. If you click these little tabs here, it sorts it. So I can sort on last seen. We can see these vehicles. This hasn't been installed. It was last seen on 2/22. And if I were to zoom to that, it will just be in Boise because that's where we tested on the 22nd. That device hasn't been installed yet. If I go the ones that have been installed are these ones from 27, 28, 28, 28. And it says, here it says 726, so it's been seen today. These other ones have not been turned on today. That's why it's
Yeah, the mower's not mowing.
Yeah, it's our mower.
The place I use it a lot is if I want to see where vehicles are on, I click the connection thing, right, I hit that, so now I'm at 328, of course, that's not on. It zooms up those vehicles that are on, if I do demos, I like to see flying things, but so just sort, that's just kind of a handy sorter there. If I want to go to, I don't know these vehicles, so if I click here on this particular, doesn't have, guess what's been installed today, I would assume, I'm trying to find one. So if I click this one, I can see, today's the 29th, it's already gone 93 miles today.
Wow.
So I can select this particular vehicle, and I can go ahead and draw the tracks for that vehicle.
Metro. I guess they go.
So once again, we have a lot of, these circles indicate was stopped here for four stops here for a total of 2 hours. If I go down here and zoom into this, it will see the individual stops. It starts breaking up individual stops. So 23-minute stop here, 1 hour and 1 hour 14 minutes there, and then we can turn on the satellite image. I don't know. Here we go. Here's truck stop.
Yeah, that's the stop, right?
Yeah, component
There's
repair.
2 stops here. If I zoom in, it'll show me the 2 individual stops. If they can't get closer.
No, you probably went in the day.
Did you notice the shift that I talked about as you zoomed in? And actually, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a, once it shifts, there's a little icon that you can click that'll switch it back and forth. If you want bird's eye view, you can switch to bird's eye view. The problem is that doesn't persist. So if you zoom out and zoom back in again, you'll have to, every time you zoom in, you have to click that little icon, but you can get rid of that. As a map maker, I find that slant view slightly disconcerting. But
I've got my toolbar here. There's zoom in, zoom out. If I want to zoom out, just they just go a lot of zoom, but
Oh, that's right.
if I want to go back, so it zooms out. I guess that zooms out to my entire extent. So I had to avoid. I guess that's what it is. That's the zoom out to the entire extent of all your vehicles. Some are still located in Boise because that was the last time that they came. But there is a unzoom here. I can go back to where I was. There's, I'm going to turn this map back on here. There's a sweeper, a little broom, so I can clear my map of all my tracks. Clear again. So, we don't have...
That doesn't delete the track.
No, it just clears it out.
Clears it from your display.
right.
Yeah, the data we're going to be storing
We haven't decided.
Well,
And them out.
Yeah, so the county, we need to, when we're doing some testing, the use case determines the storage from the state law. So we need to do some work on that. So we do have, as part of the pilot, to figure that out. And, it could vary because of the price. So we need to work with that.
and then we have these individual track points. Let's go back here. We got track again. So, there's these tracks again, and so as we zoom in, we can see these little arrows, and they're sort of track points. So we can click on them and get some information. Same thing down here, so I can look at this track point here, shows me the track point.
And one of the things you'll notice, the amount of information that's displayed in this call out here is configurable. So you notice the screenshot that I had showed vehicle speed where this one does not. That's because we haven't configured these call-outs yet to show speed. So there's one of the most powerful things about this software is the high degree of configuration. There's lots and lots of customizations that you can do to give you the exact view that you need to do the work you need to do. So there's a lot of power there to make that happen.
So if I clear my tracks, I know there's my tracks here. So if I find a location, I'm just going to pick this location here because I know there's vehicles there, but I can I guess I didn't show the replay here, so let me just draw this track again. So here's the replay button next to the draw track button. And if I can shrink this down and move it around so I can see my replay. So it's hard to tell where they went on this, just seeing these tracks, and so we can change it. Little button here, see that, I'm going up 5 minutes and 10 minutes, which is my highest replay speed. So now we can sort of replay their day.
Terry?
Yes.
We're 9 o'clock, which
Yes,
is
we're-
when we said, which is time. So we want to be respectful of your day. If anybody needs to leave, we'll leave this up until the next group starts. So if anybody, I think it's 9:15.
Oh, okay.
So don't have a lot of time.
So, just parking instructions, you want us to do.